The Luxury Blueprint, a documentary series by Fashion Business Blueprint. Episode 1, Dior, 8 Creative Directors. One House, 80 Years of Reinvention.
Paris, 1946. Europe was rebuilding itself from ruin. Fabric was rationed. The French textile industry was in crisis. And into this moment, Marcel Boussac, France's most powerful industrialist, made a calculated investment in a 41-year-old designer who had never shown a collection. The bet was not sentimental, it was strategic, because what Christian Dior was about to sell was not clothing, it was the idea that France was still the center of the world. On February 12, 1947, Christian Dior presented 90 styles. The silhouette, nipped waist, padded hips, sweeping skirt, was so radical that journalists reached for a single phrase, the new look. Women in the audience wept. Fabric merchants received orders within hours. But beyond the emotion, there was a brilliant commercial logic at work. Dior understood that couture was not a product, it was a proof of concept, a statement of values that would sell fragrance, accessories, and licenses around the world. Miss Dior, launched that same year, became one of the best-selling perfumes in history. By 1950, the house accounted for over 5% of France's total export earnings. The formula was established: create desire at the top, monetize it everywhere else. While Chanel had built a house on a single aesthetic identity, Dior built a machine, one designed to generate desire at every price point. It is the template every luxury conglomerate still follows today. When Christian Dior died in October 1957, the fashion world held its breath. The house was 11 years old. Its founder was irreplaceable, or so everyone believed. Yves Saint Laurent was 21 when he presented his first Dior collection. The trapeze line, geometric, youthful, liberated from the hourglass, was greeted with euphoria. But the deeper lesson was commercial. Dior had survived the death of its founder. The brand, its values, its address, its mythology was larger than any single creative personality. This insight would become the intellectual foundation of every major luxury conglomerate, since it is the principle Bernard Arnault would later build into a global empire. The house must outlive the designer. Fashion history celebrates the revolutionary, but the most commercially important creative director in Dior's history may be the one you have never heard of. Marc Bohan led the house for 28 years, longer than any other director before or since. His slim look made couture wearable. He dressed Grace Kelly, Marlene Dietrich, and Elizabeth Taylor. He built Dior's reputation as the gold standard of Parisian discretion. What Bohan understood was a principle that luxury companies still struggle with. That consistency is itself a competitive advantage. While other houses chase trends, Dior, under Bohan, became synonymous with a particular kind of woman, confident, timeless, and above fashion. This was brand equity being built, quietly, over 3 decades. It would fund every spectacular reinvention that followed. In 1989, Dior made a decision that would have been unthinkable a decade earlier. It appointed an Italian to lead a French couture house. Gianfranco Ferré had trained as an architect. He brought to Dior a sculptor's understanding of volume and an internationalist sense of the expanding luxury market. His dramatic white shirts, architectural collars, enormous sleeves became the defining silhouette of late 1980s luxury. But his real legacy was strategic by crossing national boundaries. Dior signaled that French luxury could absorb outside influence without losing its authority. It was the first move in what is now the universal practice of international creative leadership. John Galliano didn't design collections. He staged events that the world could not ignore. From his arrival in 1996, Galliano treated the runway as theater. Egyptian queens, Belle Epoque fantasies, homeless couture, each collection, a cultural provocation, engineered to generate maximum media coverage. And it worked. Under Galliano, Dior became the most photographed fashion house in the world. The shows themselves, their sheer ambition, became a global marketing instrument with an ROI that advertising budgets could never match. When Jadot launched in 1999, it became one of the best-selling fragrances in history. Galliano had understood something profound about the economics of luxury desire. The more impossible a world appears, the more people want to belong to it. His approach directly influenced how Versace, Gucci, and later every major house approached the runway not as a trade presentation, but as a media event. The show as spectacle, the spectacle as strategy. When Raf Simons arrived in 2012, he was given 8 weeks to prepare his first haute couture collection. What he produced was considered one of the most significant fashion moments of the decade. Simons stripped Dior back to its architecture. The geometry of the 1947 bar jacket, the rigor of the founding vision, where Galliano had spoken in exclamation marks, Simons spoke in ellipses. The 2014 documentary, Dior and I, gave the public an unprecedented view inside the atelier, the craft, the pressure, the human cost of couture. It was one of the most effective pieces of brand storytelling the house had ever produced. The lesson was precise. After a crisis, luxury brands rebuild through demonstrated integrity. In July 2016, for the first time in its 70-year history, Dior appointed a woman as creative director. Maria Grazia Chiuri's first statement was not a silhouette, it was a sentence. We should all be feminists. Printed on a cotton t-shirt priced at €600, it became the most discussed fashion item of that year. It was not naive provocation. It was precise brand positioning, aligning Dior with the conversation its target consumer was already having. Under Chiuri, ready-to-wear and accessories expanded significantly, bringing in a broader, younger, global audience. She understood that in the contemporary luxury market, a brand's cultural position, what it stands for beyond the product, is itself a commercial asset. Meanwhile, LVMH's full acquisition of Dior in 2017 reflected just how valuable that position had become. Culture, it turned out, was capital. In 2025, Jonathan Anderson arrived at Avenue Montaigne, a designer who had built his reputation on the conviction that craft and contemporary culture are not opposites, that the most radical thing a luxury house can do is take its own heritage seriously. A new chapter, the same address. The story continues. 8 creative directors, 8 different answers to the same question. What does Dior mean to the world right now? 8 different solutions to the same problem. How do you sell desire at scale and keep it rare? Dior's greatest achievement was never a single collection. It was the ability to reinvent itself completely, radically, repeatedly, without ever losing its identity. That is not just the story of a fashion house, that is a masterclass in the art of building something that lasts. Fashion shapes culture. Business shapes fashion. Every week, we explore the ideas, strategies, and decisions that build the world's most influential fashion houses.
Subscribe to Fashion Business Blueprint, and we'll see you next week.